A new poll suggests that the left-winger could win on the first ballot, with more support than all his three rivals put together. But this programme has been told that the party has already purged 1,200 names from its list of registered voters on the grounds of entryism. So is he being helped over the line by some who do not even support the party? Our political correspondent Michael Crick reports.
The people's flag is deepest red.
The day after this programme reports Welsh choirs are dying out, Jeremy Corbyn's welcomed to South Wales by a Welsh choir, singing an old Labour hymn.
It's
the Corbyn paradox, old-fashioned in so many ways, yet suddenly this summer of 2015, he's caught something very new in the air.
We had 2,000 in Leeds last Saturday, 1,500 in Liverpool the week before, 2,500 in London last week. These are amazing numbers for political events during the August holiday period.
And a YouGov poll now suggests Corbyn could win on Labour's first ballot, with more votes than his three rivals combined.
Jeremy Corbyn reaches into every bit of the Labour psyche. People, young, old, male, female, working class, middle class, they think he's principled, they think he's courageous, they think he's a breath of fresh air. He's different, and that's why they're voting for him.
But particular appeal to women, it seems, from your poll.
Well, we have 61% of women in the Labour electorate voting for him against 48% of men. So here's a chap in his late 60s with not much dress sense appealing to women. Michael, there's hope for us all.
But Labour has almost 80 full-time staff here at its London HQ and in Newcastle, recruiting new voters and weeding the lists for infiltrators or entryists from other parties. And they've already excluded 1,200 for anti-Labour deeds in the past. Many of the 1,200 purged so far have stood for other parties in elections, including 214 Green candidates, 37 candidates from the Trade Unionist and Socialist Coalition, 13 who've stood as Conservatives, 7 UKIP, 1 BNP, and 1 person who stood for the Morecambe Bay Independents. More than 30 years ago, I often reported for ITN on Labour's struggle against Militant, a Trotskyist party which burrowed into Labour and took over many local branches.
It's quite clear that the long battle over Militant is going to drag on for some time to come.
But Marxism's long been in decline. Trotskyist groups don't have the numbers they once had, and the entryism of 2015 barely compares with that of the 70s. Even with what one might call this entryist pro-Corbyn coalition of Marxists, Greens and Tories, once staff here have weeded out some of the more obvious names, I doubt whether more than 10 or 15,000 at very most will actually take part in this ballot. That's tiny compared with perhaps 250, 300,000 who'll participate overall. The way things look right now, Jeremy Corbyn is already winning this contest quite comfortably. He won't need the support of members of parties that are hostile to Labour. And Clive Heemskirk, once in Militant, now in Tusk, denies they've been recruiting for this Labour ballot anyway.
We are not encouraging, the Trade Unionists and Socialist Coalition is not encouraging our members to participate in this election because we welcome Jeremy Corbyn's campaign. We think it's a big step forward to have anti-austerity, socialist ideas prominently argued for, and therefore we don't want to give any weapon whatsoever to the pro-market, right-wing elements in the Labour Party to legally challenge the result and to stop Jeremy being elected as leader.
Yvette Cooper and Corbyn's other rivals haven't much time to catch up. People will start voting on Friday when email and postal ballots go out. Tomorrow is the closing date for people to register for Labour's leadership ballot, but the parties say that they'll be still weeding people out of the voting lists right up almost until the results declared on September the 12th. And they say that if they find that people have stood against Labour in elections or expressed anti-Labour sentiments on the internet, they'll still be able to purge those names from the register even after people have voted. They'll be able to exclude those votes from the count if necessary.
Michael Crick reporting. Well, the left-wing Labour journalist and Corbyn supporter Owen Jones is with me, and we're joined from West London by the Conservative writer Toby Young, who also wanted to vote for Jeremy Corbyn as Labour leader, obviously for very different reasons. Toby Young, you did try a bit of entryism yourself and they blocked you. Isn't that proof that this is a process which is working and isn't anything other than democratic?
Well, I think it was quite easy for them to rumble me, because in the box on the website, when I was asked why I had joined as a registered supporter, I wrote to consign Labour to electoral oblivion. So you didn't need to be Sherlock Holmes to figure out I didn't have the party's best interest at heart. So I don't think they'll catch everyone as easily.
I mean, Michael Crick was saying there that in his analysis, this entryism, as it were, is very, very small. And this phenomenon surrounding Jeremy Corbyn is something much bigger than that. I mean, do you accept that?
I think it remains to be seen, and I'm sure there'll be a lot of post-result analysis. But if a majority of long-term Labour members are in favour of Corbyn, then it beggars belief. How many elections does Labour have to lose when it puts up a left-wing leader in order for the message to sink home? Look at Michael Foot, probably the nearest equivalent to Jeremy Corbyn. In 1983, the Foot-led Labour Party polled less than 28% of the popular vote, its lowest share since 1918.
I mean, Owen
in
Jones...
97, by contrast, when Blair led the Labour Party, Labour romped home to a massive overall majority with 43% of the vote. You know, when's it going to sink in?
Yeah, Owen Jones, I mean, that point, because you do have one Labour insider after another queuing up to say, as Alistair Campbell has said today, anyone but Corbyn.
Well, I think most people don't think in terms of left or right. I think they think in terms of issues to be addressed in a way that's convincing and coherent, that resonates with their experiences, told in a language they understand, that meets the ambitions of themselves, their families, their communities and the country as a whole. I think what is interesting, and Jeremy Corbyn, like any Labour leader, would face a formidable challenge, no question about that, and he'd face quite an attack on him, I think, from all directions. But what I think he could do, for example, if you take Scotland, Labour lost 40 of its 41 seats in Scotland to the Scottish National Party. A lot of Scottish Labour supporters believe their old party had deserted them. Whether it be, there was an interesting poll by YouGov of UKIP supporters, and when they were asked a few weeks ago which Labour leader would make the most come back to Labour, it was actually Jeremy Corbyn. And then you think of people who don't vote.
We've talked to a lot of people, sorry to interrupt you, but we talked to an awful lot of people who start out by saying, yes, I'm going to vote for Corbyn. And when you press them a bit, they actually say they don't believe he can be Prime Minister. So when does this become something more than a protest vote?
I don't think it's a protest vote. I think it patronises people to suggest it is. I think the reason he's doing very well is because he has an optimistic vision, unlike many of his rivals. And, you know, people on the left often are accused of only having slogans, of knowing what they're against but not what they're for. But he's been suggesting policies like a national education service to support lifelong learning, investing in high-tech jobs of the future.
The point is about electability to become the leader of the country.
That's why I wanted to answer your point, because I think it is about policies that inspire people. I think, for example, a public investment bank, which he's been suggesting, I think whether it be dealing with the housing crisis, both council housing, private renters sector, also extending home ownership for those who want it without flogging off social housing. Whether it be, for example, young people robbed often of a future, give it in terms of education, housing, jobs, skills and so on.
Sorry, Toby Young, I mean, the people on the right and the left are running scared of Jeremy Corbyn. And that's because they do think that he will become Labour leader and that there is a potential, that there is huge popular support behind him.
I don't think David Cameron and George Osborne are running scared of the prospect of Jeremy Corbyn becoming the leader of the Labour Party. Owen's analysis is just wishful thinking. The reason the SNP did well in Scotland is because of the nationalist vote, not because they were anti-austerity. John Cruddas, who isn't even on the right of the Labour Party, conducted a poll as part of Labour's post-election analysis, and in that poll discovered that 58% of the general public agree with the statement that Britain has to live within its means, and for that reason, cutting the deficit must be a priority. Labour didn't lose the general election because it was austerity light. It lost the general election because people didn't trust Labour
Owen Jones,
on the economy.
Well, just on that, I mean, firstly, the pollster John Curtis, now he's the one who did the exit poll, one of the few pollsters to come out of the election in any glory, and he pointed out the reason in Scotland a huge number of ex-Labour voters went to the SNP is because they felt that no longer did Scottish Labour, the Labour Party as a whole, support social justice. And if you meet ex-Labour voters, they often call the Labour Party the Red Tories now. In terms of living within the country's means, who disagrees with that? And the point Jeremy Corbyn has made is to balance the books, is to eradicate the deficit, but not to do it on the backs of working people, low-paid people, disabled people, and so on. So a genuine living wage, dealing with a housing crisis so we don't spend billions on private landlords with housing benefit and create jobs, skilled jobs, and so on. That's what it's about. Balance the books, but do it in a fair and just and equal and fair way. I think that's reasonable.
Toby Young, very briefly.
How is Jeremy Corbyn going to balance the books when he said he wants to nationalise the energy companies? The cost of doing that, according to independent analysts, is $185 billion. That's not going to balance the book. That's going to plunge us into bankruptcy. We'll be the next Venezuela if
Toby
that
Young,
happens.
you've got the last word this evening. Owen Jones, thank you both of you for joining us. Thank you.